الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبعد. First, I'd like to thank the organizers of this wonderful conference and Mr. Hassan Bitmaz for his generous invitation and for the hospitality, and thank you for being with us today. Over 1400 years ago, there was a man who was commissioned by God to deliver a message. After 10 years of this message, there had only few converts to his mission. After 10 years, it was like the low point of his mission, a year that he lost the biggest supporters, his wife, his uncle. During these difficult times, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the glad tidings where he went from Mecca to Jerusalem in a single night and coming back. It was the start of the rise of this mission. Within 3 years, he was the leader of a state, of a community. Within 10 years, his mission was spread throughout Arabia and the region, where Mecca, the first Qibla, the second Qibla, was under the control of his followers. Within 100 years, these community of believers were spread throughout 3 continents. Within 1,000 years, at the time of the height of the Sulaiman al-Qanuni, the magnificent Sulaiman, that state was the greatest in terms of population as well as territory. What happened since was the decline of this civilization. So at that point, when the journey to Jerusalem took place, was the beginning and rise of the first universality of Islam, Al-Alamiyya Al-Islamiyya Al-Ula. And after they reached their zenith and the decline started coming down, we found that with the disintegration of the Muslim Ummah, we had the rise of a movement that is termed as the Zionist movement. At the heart of that Zionist movement is the division, the disunity, the dismantlement of the Muslim world. When that first universality was taking place during the night of Isra, there was no Muslim community, there was no Muslim world, and that was the start of the rise of the Muslim world. And as the turn of the century, that idea, that concept of one Muslim Ummah disintegrated with the fall of the Caliphate here in Istanbul. And we start seeing that the Muslim world became a fragmentation of states with the advent of Sykes-Picot Accords, where the Middle East by itself was disintegrating into over 20 countries, where Palestine, that territory that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed, became under assault, not only from the Zionists, but also from their supporters. What we see today is the culmination and as well as the birth of the second universality of Islam. As it started in Jerusalem over 1400 years ago, I believe that it will also start from Jerusalem now. But before we know how we can get there, we need to understand the threats and the challenges that we are facing. And that culminates into the Zionist movement that not only is a movement today, but it's a power that is trying to control the whole Middle East, and with it, the Muslim world. It started with the idea of expelling Palestinians and occupying their lands. At the heart of the Zionist movement is to negate the other, is to occupy the land. It is to expel the people. But it doesn't stop there, because it will always be under threat that those people, not only the Palestinians, but the whole people in the area, would not accept it, would reject it, would resist, and with it, they will end that assault. So at the heart of the Zionist movement, there are many features and characteristics that are taking place. Because of the lack of time, I will try to run them very quickly. First, they want this area to be always divided, politically divided, and weak and divided. That they want their economies to be dependent on the other. That their societies are split and divided on ethnic, sectarian, linguistic, tribal, social classes, and all kinds of divisions that will keep them weak. We know for a fact that when Sudan was divided into North and South, at the heart of that division was a Zionist plot that was taking place since the 1950s. When the president of South Sudan visited the Zionist state, he declared that if there was one person who should be credited for that division, for that split of Sudan, it was the person that he named, turned out to be the station chief of the Mossad in South Sudan. If we look at the whole thing of the Kurdish state and who has been championing it and trying to bring it into fruition for over 50 years, and those who have been trying to push it into independence, and with it to split further this ummah, it was the Zionists. If we look at the many wars that have been taking place and destruction throughout our area, our region, the Middle East and beyond, you would always find Zionist states, Zionist hands taking place. If you look at the attempt to deny Arabs and Muslims, whether throughout the Arab world, in Turkey, in Iran, and beyond, to deny them scientific advancement, to kill their scientists, Egyptian scientists, Iraqi scientists, Iranian scientists, Turkish scientists, a lot of them who have been specialists and experts in nuclear energy and nuclear armaments, they have been targeted and assassinated. And these are not something that even the Zionist entity would deny. If you look at those who support tyranny and dictatorship, especially after the Arab Spring movement that was sweeping the Arab world, whether in Egypt, in Tunisia, in Libya, and throughout the region, you will find that these hidden hands, both regionally as well as internationally, they have been pushed so hard by the Zionists in order to deny the people of the area their right to freedom, self-determination, and their right to be independent, and their right to live in democratic and peaceful societies. It was the Zionists, and they don't even deny it. So the threat of Zionism is beyond simply the threat to Palestine, or the threat to the Palestinian people, or to the occupation of territories, or the denial of rights, or taking Jerusalem. This is something that is a threat to every person who lives in the region, and a threat to our future. Whenever there was an attempt to bring the Muslim world together and to build Islamic unity, it has always been resisted, and it has always been fought and confronted by those who would like to deny us this right, to keep us weak and divided. and Zionists have never been away from these attempts. Even when it comes to the Islamophobia that's sweeping the world today, a phenomena that came after the fall of the Soviet Union and the collapse of communism. This was started in the late 80s, early 90s by very well-known Zionist institutions throughout the world, as well as Zionists who have been advancing this notion that Islam is the next menace, the green menace, the enemy of the West. And what we see today is the fruit of those attempts to make Islam as the threat, to make Islam synonymous with terrorism. They also want to establish this enmity, this hostility, not only among Muslims themselves and Muslims and Christians, but even among Muslims and Jews, those that they try to talk on their behalf. We know for a fact what happened in the 50s when they tried to drive many Jews of Arab countries into the newly established Zionist state, and to establish this enmity, this hatred between Jews and Muslims. We do not have problem with Judaism. Judaism is a revealed religion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in a special status for Muslims to deal with. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Mumtahina, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين. We have no problem with the Jews as Jews. We have no problem with Judaism as a religion. It's a revealed, respected religion. They have every right to live as Jews, but not as occupiers. We have problem for those who would like to expel us. إنما ينهاكم الله عن الذين قاتلوكم في الدين وأخرجوكم من دياركم وظاهروا على إخراجكم. These are the things that we are fighting. We're fighting occupation. We are fighting military adventurism. We're fighting destruction. We're fighting everything that takes our rights away, not a group of people or religion who are peacefully living among us. So we have to understand also the nature of the conflict. This is not a religious conflict from the standpoint that it is Islam versus Judaism. It's a conflict where we are against oppression, against tyranny, against occupation, against destruction. And that's what the Zionist movement today and the Zionists represent. And that's what brings us together to rid this menace, this cancer, for the benefit of the world. Because what they do is to sow conflict and sow hatred and sow hostility and sow evil among people. We saw today what happened when some Palestinians tried to make amends. 26 years ago, yesterday, the Palestinian Authority signed what is called the Oslo Accords. 26 years later, that's more than a quarter of a century later, no state, no sovereignty, no Jerusalem, no right of return, no freedom, no liberation, nothing. And you can see the nature of the enemy. What they want is to continue that Zionist project, to establish a state in Palestine that will make the division among the Muslim world permanent. All right, I got only 2 minutes. Let me conclude. Is that what happened 1400 years ago was all right, it's very difficult to finish in 10, 15 minutes and say speak slowly for the translators, so I apologize. We had the state of Isra from Mecca to Medina by our leader, by our Prophet, in which it started the universality of Islam. Today we have another state of Isra, but this time it's not for the Prophet, it is for the whole Ummah to make that Isra, to make Jerusalem as the center of our life, to make Jerusalem as being the staging state where we can start our next universality. We need to have a consensus of vision, a consensus of will, and a consensus of action. A vision where Jerusalem becomes our thermometer, becomes our scale. The closer we are to its liberation, the closer we are to realizing our purpose of being who we are. A consensus of will where we have to bring the will of the Ummah to liberate. We have to stop all conflicts, all wars among Muslims. We have to look at the bigger picture and not to be consumed with these sectarian, these tribal, these ethnic kind of conflicts that do nothing but weaken us. We need to start raising the awareness, raising the knowledge that is needed, and to embrace the values that we must have in order to be ready for that conflict, for that confrontation, for that liberation moment. We need to have one program of action. At the heart of it is to bring our ummah together and isolate the enemy. That enemy is a threat. I want to tell our many friends, especially in Turkey and others, this is not about a two-state solution. There is nothing called two-state solution. It's a myth. It's dead. This is about getting rid of a threat that threatens us all. Our program should be the total dismantlement of the Zionist entity. As long as we have something called Israel and the Zionist movement, everybody is under threat. This is not against Jews, as I said. This is against the Zionist political movement that is trying to control and hegemonize with other hegemonic powers our area. We welcome Jews anywhere in the world to come and live in the whole Muslim world, not just in Palestine. But we totally reject something called Israel or the Zionist state. Thank you very much.